Hello everyone, back tuning into the third winter 2019-2020 update from GWV.com. So we've done two updates so far. The winter of 2019-2020 have been pretty interesting, I hope you agree. And this is the third update. So we have got, for this week, we've got, you can see all the tabs we've got 78 tabs to get through. I'm going to try and bring this in at an hour. Whether I'll be able to do it remains to be seen, but we're going to do our best to bring this in at around 1 hour, going through 78 tabs. And if we can do it, I think I'll have to give myself another pat on the back. Last week had 72 tabs. I suspect a lot of you thought that couldn't be beaten, but we have beaten it for this week, 78 tabs. And I'll get on with the third winter 2019-2020 update for you very shortly. We're going to pick up exactly where we left off last week, looking at August data. So last week we finished the second winter update with August CET data. This week we're going to have a look at August precipitation data. At the end of the video, we're going to do a little bit of pattern matching for the summer, and that's to sort of whet your appetite for next week's update, which will be a little bit of a summer special. So if we're going to do anything else, just to say this, of course, with 78 home taps, it's going to be a long video. I'm going to try and bring it in at an hour. But there will be a couple of breaks as we go along, so you'll be able to pause the video, go and have a walk around and stretch your legs a little bit. So there will be a couple of breaks. But I suggest you get yourself a comfy chair, get yourself a cup of tea, and some biscuits, whatever snacks or treats that you want, because we will be here for a little while. Big thank you to Analogs guru James Acrill for getting the analogs together for us in the first part of the video. Anyway, the analogs you'll see at the end, actually I've created. They're not as good as James is, but hope the analogs that I've created for the end of the video are okay. Anyway, they're not up to James's standard. But a big thank you to Analogs guru James Acrill. And also a big thank you to Richard Trott for getting our winter updates GIF created for us. So, I think that's everything I'm going to tell you. This video is going to be placed on the Winter Updates page, of course, with a written summary going over everything that we discuss in the video. I'll get that up for you around 7, 8 o'clock this evening. Probably quite late because I've got to do a live chat on YouTube between 5 and 6, just talking to everyone about this Winter Update, taking any questions that you might have about this update. So, it'll be on the YouTube channel, not at GWV.com. That'll be just on YouTube between 5 and 6 o'clock this evening. I think that's everything that I've got to tell you. So, I think we'd better get on with it. And we are going to start this video exactly where we left off last week with August data. So, we are looking at England and Wales precipitation for August 2019 first of all. You see, well, actually, rainfall during August 2019 was rather split north to south, so it was a very wet month across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for England and Wales, it was actually a lot closer to average, rather above average for Wales and southwest England, and then we have East Anglia looking drier than average, southeastern parts of England too. Total England and Wales precipitation for August 2019 came out at 87.2 millimetres. And so the range of precipitation that we're looking at for this update for August England and Wales precipitation is 82 to 91 millimetres. Of course, that places August 2019 slap bang in the middle, and then we're looking at the winters that follow those August with very similar precipitation to August 2019. So this, to start us off, is the winter of 1863-1864. It is following an August England and Wales precipitation of 82 to 91 millimetres, very similar England and Wales precipitation to August 2019. This is how the winter looks, rather an unsettled winter for 1863-1864. Let's change the colour. We've got below average heights sitting up to our north, and down to our south and southeast. Some above average heights are in the middle of the Atlantic, and that leaves us doing something a little bit like that with the flow and with the jet stream. It's quite an unsettled winter by looking at it, and pretty mild winter as well. There's no northern blocking field. There's nothing to force cold air out of the Arctic and down into the west of Europe, so this looks like it will be a mild but rather wet winter to start us off. Our next winter is 1876-1877. This one also looking very unsettled, very wet winter indeed, bringing in these westerly winds. So that's just the Atlantic unleashed big time there for 1876-1877. You expect a very mild and also a very wet winter with that one. Our next winter is 1882-1883, again with following England and Wales precipitation around August 2019, which came out at 87.2 millimetres. This one also looks like a wet winter, so early on we have a bit of a trend here for quite a mild wet winter type signal with these winters following August with this particular precipitation range. Our next winter is 1888-1889. This one's a little bit different. It does have some higher pressure closer, so not quite as much of an Atlantic unleashed type winter, but nevertheless, it still looks pretty unsettled, and again, not particularly cold. There's no northern blocking here. Got below average heights up to the north and also down to our south. That leaves us doing something like that with the flow, with the jet. There probably is cold snaps associated with that one, 1888, 1889, but generally it looks like it would probably be quite let's say it's a cool winter rather than a really cold one. Now, the next one is our first genuinely really cold winter. This is the severe winter of 1894-1895. And this one is the first one we've had that has true and genuine northern blocking. It has this big area of high pressure sat up towards Greenland, and it has low pressure underneath it through the mid latitudes. Again, the jet stream pushed southwards like that, so this is a cold, very cold winter in 1894-1895. So something got a little bit wrong there. Let's see if we can get rid of that, and then we'll get rid of that as well, and we will see if we can get rid of that also, and hopefully we're back on track. So this is a very cold, severely cold winter from 1894-1895. There was not to be another severely cold winter for over 40 years. We had to get to 1940 for our next really severely cold winter, although there is 1917 in between. But yeah, it's a long stretch from 1895 to 1940. The next winter, with a very similar England and Wales precipitation to August 2019 at 87.2 millimetres, is the winter of 1898-1899. This one back to trend, I would have thought, ready for what I had with the earlier winters. So this one looks very mild and pretty wet as well, Atlantic unleashed with this particular winter. The next winter is 1904-1905. Again, this one with above average heights sitting out to our west, below average heights are to the east, doing something a little bit like that with the flow, with the jet stream. So 1904-1905 is a relatively dryish winter. The Atlantic is blocked off. Don't know a great deal about that winter, really, of 1904-1905, but looks like it's a relatively dry winter. We're back to another cold winter, though, for 1916-1917. This one, again, with the above-average heights up towards Greenland, below-average heights down to our south. This is a very cold winter in the middle of the Great War. We're pushing the jet stream southwards, and we're introducing cold air into the trough of low pressure. So that one is a very cold winter for 1916-1917. And the next winter is 1925-1926 with low pressure in the Atlantic and coming into the UK. That's bringing in a very mild westerly flow. High pressure is down to the south and also up to the north, but it's a mild Atlantic-driven and rather unsettled zonal westerly type winter that we have there for 1925-1926. Then we have to move on to our next winter, which is 1938-1939. Remember, the England and Wales precipitation total that we're looking at with these winters is 82 to 91 millimetres, placing... that's for August, of course. August, England, Wales precipitation 82 to 91 millimetres, placing August 2019 at 87.2 millimetres, slap bang in the middle of our range. The winter of 1938-1939 is an unsettled winter with below average heights close to the country. It's quite a wet winter. It does have high pressure up to the east and the northeast. So, hints of the northern blocking melt we will perhaps get in the following winter. It's just a very unsettled winter indeed. 38-39 does have a cold, really cold spell through second half of December as well, around Christmas. There's a classic white Christmas. And January 1939 is a very unsettled month with a lot of rain mixed in as well. The rain and snow mixed in as well. The next August is 1942, and this is how the winter of 1942-1943 looks. This is a mild winter. This one brings an end to the trilogy of cold winters that we had in the early 1940s. This one has low pressure up to the north, high pressure to the south, and we bring in those flat westerly winds. So that's back to milder conditions and relatively dry conditions, certainly for the south, in the winter of 1942-1943. The next winter is 1943-1944. This one again with low pressure to our south, high pressure is kind of out to our west in that sort of position. So it's relatively dry winter in 43-44. It's not a particularly unsettled winter at all. There's a lot of dry weather on offer. And it's a relatively mild winter too. The next winter is 1953-1954, and this one again with the above average heights out to our west and also to our northeast, and then we've got below average heights down to our south. This is a pretty cold winter for 53-54. This is quite a cold winter with winds coming in from an easterly direction in particularly February of 1954. January 1954 has a few colds. Now, December 1953 is relatively mild, so it's kind of a backloaded type winter for cold. The next winter is 61-62. Again, this precedes the cold winter of the severely cold winter of 1963, of course. This one with low pressure to our east, high pressure out to the west, and again we're bringing in these northerly winds. So it's quite a coldish winter in its own right, the winter of 61-62. It's not remembered as a particularly cold winter. But especially late on, particularly as you get through to the end of February into March 1962, there's quite a lot of cold weather, but of course very, very much overshadowed by the winter of 62-63, which of course is the daddy of cold winters. The next winter is 1979-1980, again following England and Wales precipitation close to 87 millimetres. This one has the above average heights up to our east and northeast, so below average heights are out to the west. It looks like it should be quite a cold winter in 79-80, but it wasn't a particularly cold winter. Then we've got 80-81 showing up next. This one has below average heights to our east. It has above average heights out to the west, and the thing with this one is that we have cold snaps really through this winter. It's not a sustained cold winter at all, but it does have a few cold snaps, particularly I think in January 1981 there's quite a potent cold snap mixed in there. 82-83 shows up next. So we have this run of August that are very close to August 2019 for England and Wales precipitation. We have this run of them through the early 1980s. This one again with the below average heights. Let's see if we can change the colour. Below average heights up to the north and above average heights out to the west, and that leaves us bringing in these westerly winds. So this is quite a mild winter for 82-83 until February, when it does get a lot colder from the east, but overall this is quite a mild winter in 82, 83. Our next winter, following an August England and Wales precipitation of 82 to 91 millimetres, was 1988, 1989. And this one is a westerly winter. It's a very mild winter with low pressure up to our north and high pressure over into the south of the country. We bring in these mild west or even southwesterly winds. Lots of dry weather. This is quite a dry winter in 88, 89, but it's also a very mild winter indeed. And we'll go through to the next winter, which is 2001, 2002. This one has above average heights to our south and below average heights up to the north and the west. And again, with this one, we're bringing in the wind from a southerly to southwesterly direction. It has quite a cold snap in December of 2001, and then it turns very mild and also quite wet through January, second half of January anyway, and into February of 2002. The next winter is 2006, 2007. Quite similar in some ways to the two winters we're just talking about. So this one with low pressure up to the north and high pressure over into the south. This is obviously set up to be a mild or a very mild winter, bring those winds in from a west or southwesterly direction. So it's a very mild winter, 2006, 2007, but also relatively dry at times. And so bringing all of that together, this is how all Decembers combined are looking when we are following August with an England and Wales precipitation of 82 to 91 millimetres. And all Decembers combined from that particular analogues package look unsettled. Low pressure, below average heights over to the north of the country and mild, bring the wind in from a west or southwesterly direction. That analogues package definitely favouring milder Decembers, but also quite wet Decembers. All Januaries combined when we have an England and Wales precipitation in August of 82 to 91 millimetres. Not quite as clear a signal to be unsettled, but overall still with below average heights to the north. Otherwise, not a huge amount going on. There's no northern blocking signal, though, so it looks as though they're still generally quite mild Januaries, I would have thought, on average, just not quite as unsettled as we have during the Decembers. And then the Februaries look like this, maybe a little bit more of a cold snap potential for the Februaries combined. So above average heights then are in the middle of the Atlantic, low pressures up to the north, but also to some degree through the west of Europe. The Flurma jet's probably doing something a bit like that. So with those Februaries, overall you would expect rather unsettled conditions again, but possibly with a little bit more potential for some colder snaps to be mixed in, let's say. March gets quite interesting. Just outside of the winter, we suddenly see a northern blocking signal appearing for March when we have this England and Wales precipitation of 82 to 91 millimetres in August. So all of a sudden we get these above average heights turning up over Greenland, a strong northern blocking signal up there with low pressure to our over and to our south and east, and that sends a jet stream into that kind of direction. So the greatest potential for colder conditions actually out of all of that following this August data is probably going to be in March. That's when we have the greatest chance anyway of getting some northern blocking. And then finally, this is how all winters combined are looking when we have an August England and Wales precipitation of 82 to 91 millimetres. Overall unsettled signal, not surprising from the month-by-month breakdowns, I wouldn't have thought. Below average heights into the north and through the UK and western part of Europe. No particularly evident northern blocking signal. We have to wait to March until we get that. So this is a mild but unsettled signal for August. Definitely favouring this August England and Wales precipitation range, definitely favouring milder but also at times quite wet conditions, particularly so in December. And that's it then for this first section of the video. So we talked just under 20 minutes, not doing too badly, I don't think. I'm going to pause the video there. You're going to get yourself a drink of water, and then when we come back, we're going to go through the rest of the GWV's winter updates methodology. We're going to start off by looking at what's happening with ENSO and with sea surface temperature anomalies more generally. So I'm going to pause the video there. You go and get yourself a cup of tea, and we'll see each other back here in around 2 seconds' time. So see you very soon. Okay, we're back, and we are ready to resume the third winter 2019-2020 update. And before the break, we was talking about August precipitation for England and Wales for August 2019. And we was looking at August had a similar England and Wales precipitation, and also the winters that followed them. And generally, it's quite a mild and wet, unsettled type pattern for those winters. Although there were some very notable exceptions, like the severe winter of 1895, for example. But overall, it was a pretty mild analogues package. Of course, the thing with analogues that you have to bear in mind, I'm not sure if I say this enough really, but the thing with analogues that you have to bear in mind is that we are just looking at the most likely outcome. But within those analogues, there are obviously years that deviate. And so just because that's the most likely outcome of that analogues package to be mild and unsettled doesn't mean that we couldn't come out with a winter that deviated from that most likely outcome. And of course, that's the reason we put all of these analogues together. So we would not do a winter forecast based purely on August England and Wales precipitation. That would be very silly to do that. What we are looking for as we're going along with these updates is to match up years throughout the analogues update. So we should in the end finish up with leading players for these analogue years, and those leading players will be kind of the best analogues for 2019, if you see what I mean. So anyway, that was the first part of the video. We're going to go on now and go through the rest of the methodology. There'll be more analogues coming up at the end of the video with a little bit for summer 2019. We're going to do a little bit of pattern matching. That will be in part 3 of the video. Let's get on with part 2 then. We're going to start off for part 2 this week by looking at ENSO. So I just wanted to bring you up to date with the fact that El Nino has ended. This is the cold and warm episodes by season chart from CPC and NOAA. So this is depicting all ENSO events, be they La Nina, El Nino, or ENSO neutral, going all the way back to the year of 1950. Of course, La Nina is these negative blue numbers in the boxes here. El Nino is the red positive numbers in boxes, for example, just there in 1953. Now, we have had a weak El Nino over the past few months. It began at the end of last year, actually. So this is 2018 just here. Excuse me, this is 2019 just here. You see how these red numbers appear at the end of 2018. And then carry on through most of 2019 up to the latest tri-monthly period that we have, which is for June, July, August, when we go from red to black. We've gone back to black, and there we are. We're back to ENSO neutral at just 0.3. So to get an El Nino designated, I'm saying true for La Nina, but on the other side, to get an El Nino designated, you have to be at an all-important number, 0.5 degrees or more, above average. You have to be half a degree or more above average to get an El Nino designated. And you have to do it over 5 tri-monthly periods as well, by the way. So we have fallen under that all-important 0.5. We're at 0.3. And that takes us back officially and formally to ENSO neutral. We've known for a little while we're at ENSO neutral, but that very much confirms it. But through the summer, we went from what was a very, very weak El Nino, only just about managing to scrape El Nino status as it is. At its peak, this El Nino event came out at 0.9. So it only just managed to get to El Nino threshold anyway, but over the summer, for that tri-monthly period of June, July and August, we formally ended the El Nino and went back to ENSO neutral. This is how sea surface temperature anomalies were looking last week when we did last week's second winter 2019-2020 update. We have our three areas of interest, of course. We've got the equatorial Pacific Ocean just here. We've got the northern Pacific Ocean up there, and then we've got the Atlantic Ocean over there. Now, we've got a very warm Atlantic Ocean at the moment, and last week in the second update, have a look at that if you didn't get to see it. Do catch up with it, because last week we went all the way back to the 1980s. We went right back to the I think it was 1983 perhaps, or 1982. So we went a very, very long way back, looking for years that had as warm an Atlantic Ocean as we've got right now, North Atlantic Ocean. And there weren't that many of them, actually. So the Atlantic Ocean is in a very warm state at the moment, and we have to go back to 2012, really, to find the Atlantic Ocean in as warm a condition as that. But I'll come to the Atlantic in a moment. Let's deal with the ENSO region first of all. So that's the ENSO region there, of course. That's how things were looking last week when we did last week's second winter update. This is how things are looking this week. So for the ENSO region, first of all, very little change. We've still got this very weak signature for a La Nina. It isn't at a La Nina threshold. The temperature anomalies are not cold enough, not reach that all-important half degree below average threshold. But we have got a coolish looking area there through the equatorial Pacific Ocean. I don't think there's been much change on last week. Again, let's go back to last week, that situation, last week, this situation, this week. Don't think there's been all that much change, really. So quite stable, around ENSO neutral, slightly on the cooler side of ENSO neutral, I think is where we are right now. Further north, in the northern Pacific Ocean, so perhaps a slight reduction in the sea surface temperature anomalies here in this northeastern corner. Still several degrees above average, still looking really warm up there, and possibly all that's happened is that last week maybe the sea surface temperature anomalies were as warm as they could possibly get, and so this week has seen a very slight subtle reduction, but we're still talking about very significantly warmer than average conditions in the northeastern part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, which is in the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean, I should say, which is something we've had quite a lot of over the past few years. We'll probably do something similar for the Pacific, for the North Pacific, as we did for the North Atlantic last week, actually, in a future update. We'll probably go through all of those years again, but this time, instead of focusing on the Atlantic, we'll be focusing on the Pacific. Over in the Atlantic, so again, that situation last week in the North Atlantic, this is the situation now. Very little change, possibly a slight reduction in sea surface temperature anomalies to the south of Greenland, and looking pretty warm through the tropical Atlantic as well. Overall, it is still very significantly above average across most parts of the Atlantic Ocean, except over here towards Spain and the Canary Islands. That area has got a little bit cooler over the past week, probably driven by low pressure. The SOI is quite interesting at the moment. It's Southern Oscillation Index, which is an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state in the Southern Ocean. It's measuring the air pressures between Darwin and Tahiti, and it's telling us whether the atmospheric setup is kind of in an El Nino or a La Nina type state. So when the SOI is negative, then the atmospheric setup will be reflective of El Nino. When the SOI is positive, the atmospheric setup will be reflective of La Nina. Now what we see is that we are getting a reduction in the SOI again. So this red line here is the 30-day average for the Southern Oscillation Index. You'll see that around middle of August it was up towards ENSO neutral, but look how it's reducing again. Look how it's dropping away, going back towards -10. That's quite a negative SOI indeed, and the reason that's happening is that our daily returns are becoming more negative again. So if we go to the 1st of September, you'll see we had some very negative numbers on the 1st and the 2nd of September for the SOI, -14, -20, the 3rd coming out at -16, the 4th coming out at -14. These are all very negative numbers, and it's an atmospheric state that is reflective of El Nino type condition. If we scroll up to further on in the month, we can see But as we get towards the more recent returns, we're going even more negative with the SOI. So this is a bit of a crash of the SOI, but we see at the moment the 8th of September going out minus 20, the 9th of September going out minus 21. Not quite as negative for the 10th at minus 11, or the 11th at minus 11 again. But on the 12th, we go down to minus 24. On the 13th, we go down to minus 28.88. And the very latest day that we've got from Queensland government is for the 14th of September at minus 26. Now, this looks as though the SY is entering a consistently negative phase. If this was to continue, then it would probably start to drive the sea surface temperatures warmer again through the equatorial Pacific. And it's not inconceivable, if this was to go on, not saying it will, but if it was to go on over a few weeks, it's not even inconceivable we could start finding ourselves going back towards weak El Nino again for the winter of 2019-2020. At the moment, we're still favouring ENSO neutral for this winter of 2019-2020. But it still looks like it's going to be ENSO neutral. But this collapse, this crash off the cliff of the SOI, could be pointing us towards the chance of a recurring weak El Nino beginning to get going through the course of this autumn. So it's very, very uncertain where we're going with the with El Nino at the moment, with ENSO. And all eyes are going to be on the Southern Oscillation Index. All eyes will be on the SOI in the next few days and weeks, I think, to see whether we are starting to shift into more of an El Nino type pattern. This is how the CFSV2 is forecasting things to go with ENSO. So at the moment, we're just here. We're slightly on the cooler side of ENSO neutral. The black dash line is the ensemble mean. See, that's lifting up, still staying just under that all-important 0.5, or that all-important half a degree above average. So this is keeping us just about ENSO neutral, on the warm side of ENSO neutral, but for an ENSO neutral winter, dates on the bottom of the chart, of course, in monthly periods. The blue lines, though, the blue coloured lines, they're the more recent members of the CFS ensemble plume. And you see, these are actually going back into weak El Nino territory. A lot of these are going up to around 1 degree above average. So this is really uncertain where we're going with ENSO for this winter. It did at one time, not that long ago, around a month, 6 weeks ago, look like maybe weak La Nina. Now it's looking like ENSO neutral. Still think it's probably going to be an ENSO neutral winter of 2019-2020, but not inconceivable that we might actually start shifting into a weak El Nino again. So expect to see, as is often the case actually over the past few years, expect to see our ENSO analogues for this winter very late on. I don't think we'll be able to reveal those until like the final 2 or 3 updates in November, really, because we're going to have to wait several weeks, I think, to see exactly where this is going and what's going to happen. At the moment, I definitely wouldn't like to predict that we're certain to have an ENSO neutral winter, albeit that's where I think we're going to be with this winter at ENSO neutral condition. Right, solar activity next. So this is how the solar disk is looking on our side of this today from solarham.net. We have a spotless sun once again. We're at solar minimum, of course, so most days we look at this and we don't see any sunspots. There'll be the occasional day where there is a sunspot, but because we're at solar minimum, very little in the way of solar activity. Officially, solar activity is at very low levels, and Solarham is reporting that solar activity will remain at very low levels for the next 3 days at least. This is the GWV's 3rd winter update solar activity tracker, updated to the 14th of September by our good friend James Ackrill. So again, we have the orange line down here, which is depicting each individual day's sunspots. You can see that we are getting 1 or 2 days, a very small number now, just 1 or 2 days that have sunspots. But overall, we have most days now that don't have any sunspots. Of course, as I've explained past videos, this change happened in May during this period just here. So before there, you see that most days the days that had sunspots were outnumbering the days that didn't. So most days before May this year had sunspots, albeit there were days in between that didn't, but the days that had them were outnumbering the days that didn't. Since May, definitely and clearly you can see that the days that don't have sunspots, the days that are spotless, they are clearly outnumbering the days that do have sunspots, and this quite clearly, I think, shows that it was in May this year that we dropped into true solar minimum. And because of that, the trend lines, which are the thick green and thick red lines, they are sort of flatlining on the bottom of the chart. They're going nowhere fast. They, of course, being our 30-day, or the red line anyway, is our 30-day average. So definitely we are at solar minimum, and we have very, very low levels of solar activity. Now, the reason that we look at solar activity is because there is a connection between being around or after solar minimum and having an increased risk of northern blocking in the winter. So this is a indication, doesn't guarantee anything, but it's an indication that we might have a greater chance of having blocking this winter. If we have blocking this winter, that will give us a greater possibility anyway of having a colder winter. Thought I'd show you this. We haven't looked at this with this season yet, and this is something that really goes back to past updates. How are we doing for time? So at 35 minutes, we're doing okay. So this is comparing the solar cycles of solar cycle 24, the current solar cycle, and solar cycle number 12, and their respective winter CETs. Now, the solar cycle, I should say, of solar cycle number 24 has really from beginning to where we are right now, been running in a very similar fashion in terms of solar activity to solar cycle number 12. And that's something that we've discussed quite a lot in our solar updates, of course. What we did observe through the first half of this solar cycle, for solar cycle 24, is that the winter CETs also appeared to be trending in a very, very similar direction to the winters in solar cycle number 12. Solar cycle 12, by the way, running, of course, from 1877, 1878, all the way to 1890, 1891. So the orange coloured box here is going to be solar cycle 24, the current solar cycle. The blue coloured box is solar cycle 12. So you'll see that the first winter of both of these two solar cycles were milder than average. Of course, solar cycle 12 was a little bit milder than the comparison winter in solar cycle. The winter of solar cycle 24 was a little bit milder than the comparison winter of solar cycle 12, but the trend is the same. And then we go through to the next winter, these two just here, again trending in a similar direction. That winter for solar cycle 12 is the severe winter of 1878, 1879. The comparison winter for solar cycle 24 is 2008, 2009. That winter nowhere near as cold as its counterpart from solar cycle 12, but nevertheless the trend is still in the same direction. Then we've got the third winter of these two solar cycles, which is this one just here, both coming out colder than average. This time, interestingly, the winter for solar cycle 24, this orange one just here, which is 0910, that is actually colder than its counterpart winter, its comparison winter, if you like, from solar cycle 12. The trend continues with the following winter, just there, both of them again colder than average, and the trend again continues for the next winter, this one just here. They both go milder than average. We get a little bit of a split appearing for the next winter, which is 1882, 1883, and 2012, 2013. The winter from solar cycle number 12 was milder than average. The winter from solar cycle 24, the current solar cycle, was colder than average, 12, 13. Back to trend for the following winter, both of those coming out milder than average at 1883, 84, 2000. 2013, 2014. And we're pretty much on trend still for the next winter as well. This one just here. They're both kind of average. So for the winter in solar cycle number 12, 1884, 1885, it's a little bit milder of an average. 2014, 2015 is ever so slightly cooler than average. But overall, they're average type winters. And so I think we can say up to that point, the trend continues. But then you'll see what happens with the following winter. And this connection, this trend, is then broken. It's broken apart as we see the comparison winter from solar cycle 12, which is 1885, 1886, goes colder than average, and its counterpart winter from solar cycle 24, which is 2015, 2016, goes significantly warmer than average, very warm winter. So at that point, it looks like we have broken the trend almost. Then we continue to break the trend as we go through to the next winter. That one again, for solar cycle 24, is colder than average. Its comparison winter is milder than average just there. The following winter, in 1887, 1888, and 2017, 2018, it looks like we start to go back towards trend again, going a little bit colder than average for the solar cycle 24 winter, and it's quite significantly colder than average for solar cycle number 12. So at that point, it appears that after the two winters that broke the trend, possibly we're going back to trend. Well, up to last winter, this is how we're looking. So the winter for solar cycle number 24 is 2018-2019, of course. This orange colour box just here. Its counterpart winter for 1888, 1889, that one just there, is around average. So again, probably breaking the trend there at that point. So what's going to be interesting to see is where we go with this coming winter compared to its counterpart winter from solar cycle number 12. So that's the winter of solar cycle 12 just there. It's 1889, 1890. Of course, we don't have a comparison winter for this coming winter for solar cycle 24, which is going to be 2019, 2020. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Will we start to go back to trend? If we do, we will have basically an average type winter, or will we do something different? Will we go warmer than average, or maybe even will we go down here and have a colder than average winter? It will be interesting to see, but I think it is very apparent, isn't it, that through the first half of this solar cycle, there's definitely a trend, not only with solar activity, but also with the winters, in the way they're trending, not necessarily their exact outcomes, but the way they trend up to the middle part of this solar cycle is very similar, and then we get 2015-16, and we break that trend. Of course, 2015-2016 is when we had the Super Nino going on. We didn't have a Super Nino in solar cycle number 12. We did have one in the middle of solar cycle 24, or as we get towards the end of solar cycle 24, I suppose. So that is possibly one of the reasons why we broke that trend that we had through the earlier part of the solar cycle. And it could be that we haven't totally come out of the influence of that Super Nino that we had in 2015-16. That's just my speculation, but it could be that we haven't totally come out of that Super Nino, and that's the reason that although during 2017-18 it looked like we was getting back to trend, that wasn't continued for 2018-19. Anyway, it's all food for thought, and we'll be keeping a very close eye on that, I would have thought, through the course of the next few months. 2019 hurricane activity next. So I'm going to have to race through this. I've been talking a little bit too long in that section. So these are the current scores on the doors. We stand for this hurricane season with 9 total depressions, 8 tropical storms, 2 hurricanes, and 1 Category 3 or above hurricane season. These numbers are increasing week by week. It's still a relatively modest start to this hurricane season, but we've got a way to run. Yeah, we're only midway through September. So all eyes will be on the tropical Atlantic over the next few weeks. QBO, next, quasi-binary oscillation. Of course, we confirmed last week that the QBO is reducing. It's beginning to move out of its westerly phase. It's still in its westerly phase, but it's beginning to move out of it and starting to head not yet into its easterly phase, but it's beginning to go from westerly and perhaps starting to transition to easterly. Again, we confirm that with this chart. This is from the University of Berlin. So the grey areas here are where we've got westerly QBOs. The white areas are where we've got easterly QBOs. If we come down to the current year, 2019, just there you see we've been in a westerly QBO through this year, but this white area up here is expanding. So with this, you have to think that we've got the top level of the atmosphere there at 10 HPA, got the bottom level out of the atmosphere just there, that's on the surface where we are. So up in the top layers of the atmosphere, the easterly QBO, this white area, is beginning to descend down. It's got to get to around 30 to 50 HPA just there. That's the boundary level of the atmosphere, where when it reaches that level, we'll be able to say we're moving into the easterly QBO. At the moment, the easterly QBO is just developing in the top level of the atmosphere, but it is beginning to it is beginning to push down into the troposphere. The reason we look at the QBO is that an easterly QBO is basically measuring the strength of the zone of westerly. So an easterly QBO, you have a weakened zone of westerly. Westerly QBO, you have a strengthened zone of westerly. So easterly QBOs are associated with an increased chance of cold winters. But of course, it's not that straightforward because we do have many easterly QBOs that are also mild winters. This is how the Arctic oscillation is looking. So the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart is looking like that. Black line shows where we've been with the AO in a very negative phase, of course. Red lines at the end where GFS ensembles forecasting the AO to go. At the moment, we're weekly positive with the Arctic oscillation. We're going to drop down negative around the middle of September, and then we're going to bounce back up to positive again. It looks like this September is going to be our first positive AO month, possibly since back around March or April. The Arctic oscillation, again, just measuring the atmospheric setup as all these indexes are. When the AO is positive, you've got low pressure up over the North Pole. When the AO is negative, you've got high pressure up over the North Pole. NAO observed in the forecast chart looks like this. So the black line again shows where we've been with the NAO, red lines at the end where GFS ensembles forecasting the NAO to go. Both indexes have been positive through September. That's where we are right now on the positive side with the NAO. We're going to go negative briefly around the middle part of the month, and then, similar to what the AO is doing, pop back up to positive again in the second half of the month. Remember, this is measuring the atmospheric setup in the North Atlantic. So when the NAO is positive, you've got low pressure around ice, you've got high pressure through the Azores. It's converse when the NAO is in its negative phase. This is what's happening in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA over North Pole, very early in the season, of course. We've got the dates on the bottom. This black line shows where we currently are with the temperature at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over North Pole. We're actually a little bit colder than average at that top level of the atmosphere. The grey line is the trend line. Should be cooling down, of course, at this time of year, becoming very cold through to the end of the year. So black line shows that we're a little bit cooler than average, not all that far from average though, with temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole. 30 HPA, that's how we're looking. Again, very close to average, possibly slightly above average at 30 HPA. That's a little bit lower, closer to the tropospheric level. I want to show you what's happening in the southern hemisphere, though I have no idea if this has any bearing on our winter conditions, but we are having a very dramatic, I think it's a record-breaking southern stratospheric warming. See how this black line has shot up to 0 degrees at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over North Pole. That is an incredible warming of the stratosphere that's taking place over the South Pole. It's quite rare to have that. Certainly to that level over the South Pole. Doesn't happen all that often. If we can, I'll try and do a little bit of research about what, if any, impacts this could have. I don't know if it could have any impacts on our weather for this winter. But I'll try and do a little bit of research if I can. But I don't know much about the South Pole in terms of southern stratospheric waters and whether that can have an effect on North Pole. If anybody knows, do let me know in the comments. If you can point me towards some websites that might help to explain things a little bit, that would be really helpful as well. This is from weatheriscool.com. This is depicting the strength of the zonal winds. Lots of different coloured lines. Haven't got time to go through all of them. Check out update number 1 if you want to know what each individual line is showing. The most important one is a black line. That's the trend line. So zonal winds at 10 HPA in the stratosphere. As the stratospheric temperature is cooling, the zonal winds should be strengthening. The blue line, job to make it out, but it's a little bit weaker than average. Zonal winds are trending a little bit weaker than they should be and have been throughout the past few months. The green lines just here, those are the GFS ensembles. They're forecasting, but overall the strength of the zonal winds at 10 HPA are going to stay a little bit weakened. And then the 3 pink and 1 blue coloured line, that's what the CFSV2 4 CFSV2 members are forecasting in terms of the zonal winds up to December. That's December just there, so that would be kind of like New Year's Eve just there. You can see, but overall most of these CFS members are keeping the zonal winds or forecasting the zonal winds to stay weak, and we do have this pink one here excuse me, this pink one here that's going a little bit stronger, but most of the CFS members are actually forecasting the zonal winds to stay quite weak. This is how things are looking in terms of Arctic sea ice extent. So if I put in the grey line, of course, that's the trend. We are in the melt season for Arctic sea ice at the moment. If I put in 2019, look how far below average we are with Arctic sea ice extent for this year, way below average. Let's put in 2012. You'll see that we have managed to avoid beating 2012. We're not going to beat 2012, which was the record minimum for Arctic sea ice extent. We haven't had a death spiral this year, but we have had a very, very big melt season indeed. I think the melt season is pretty much over. Let's put in some other coloured lines. That's 2018. That's 2017 under both of those years for this melt season. Very close to 2016. On a par with 2016, that's 2015, we're underneath 2015, that's 2014, has it appeared? I think it has, yes, it's up there, so well under 2014, and that's 2013, well under that as well. It's pretty much over, I think, this melt season. I would suspect by next week, if we can get rid of all of those other coloured lines, I suspect by the time we get to next week, we will start to see this blue line beginning to tick up. It may take another week, but very, very shortly we're going to see that blue line ticking up. Been a really big melt season this year, but not as big as melt season in 2012. And in terms of Arctic sea ice and Eurasian snow cover, this is how things were looking last week. So this yellow area is where we've got Arctic sea ice, of course. We had Arctic sea ice last week. The blue area is where that's melted and the ocean has opened up. You see, last week we had these little white patches as well, but not much in way of snow, which you really wouldn't expect anyway in early September. But this is the latest. That's quite dramatic, actually. That's quite a big increase in snow cover here through this central part of Siberia. Notice how far back the ice has receded, so it has melted a little bit more over the past week, but I'd say, excuse me again, I say this melt season is very nearly at an end. But I want to concentrate on snow cover because for the 13th of September, that is actually very impressive. Let's just go back through the archives and see how that compares back to 1998. So this is 2018. Obviously, 13th, all these days are going to be showing the 13th of September, or nearly all of them. So obviously for snow cover for this year, we are well ahead of 2018. Let's run through. That's 2017, well ahead of 2017. That's 2016, well ahead of that. Wouldn't normally be doing this, by the way, until October. So the fact we're doing this so early, in the middle of September, I think that's the earliest we've ever done this, these comparisons. So that, is, again, is indicative of how unusual this is. What we have had over the past few days with this snow cover. That's 2015, we are well ahead of 2015, that's 2014, well ahead of that year. 13th of September 2013, well ahead there. That's 2012. Look how little Arctic sea ice we have in 2012. So again, that just shows that we haven't beaten the death spiral year. In terms of snow cover, though, we're well ahead of 2012 at this point. That's 2011, well ahead of that. That's 2010, no comparison. 2009, no comparison. 2008, no comparison either. That's 2007. I mean, there's just no comparison, really, with any of these years compared to where we are right now. That's 2006. So what do we think about that? Possibly on a par with 2006, although they're in slightly different areas. Maybe a little bit more for this year, though, compared to 2006, I have to say. But that's probably the closest year. That's 2005, no comparison. 2004, 2003, 2002, again, no comparison. 2001, 2000, none of these years compared to this year. That's 1999. I mean, look how much snow we have this year compared to 1999. And that's 1998 as far as we go. Again, no real comparison. So what's happened there over the past week is very, very unusual, and only perhaps 2006 compares, but I think probably a little bit ahead of 2006 as well. So certainly back to 1998, there's no real comparison to this year. That is something we'll look at much, much more when we get through to October. We will look at it week by week up until then, of course. And if any more dramatic developments happen, obviously we'll keep you posted. Right, we've talked for 54 minutes. I'm going to pause the video there. We'll be back for part 3 in a moment. And we're going to look at those summer pattern matches. This is going to run over an hour now. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this in an hour. But hope you find it interesting. Anyway, hope you're enjoying this winter update. I'm going to pause the video there. We'll meet back very, very shortly and go through those summer pattern matches. Okay, we're back, and we are ready to resume part 3 of the third Winter 2019-2020 update, and what an epic update this has been. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we've come to the final part. We're going to do a little bit of pattern matching to finish off with looking at the summer of 2019. Now, do bear in mind, James, our analogs guru, didn't create these analogs. I did, so they don't look as good as James does them, but they get the broad message across. So let's have a look at the summer of 2019. This is how the summer of 2019 looks reanalyzed. It's a very unusual pattern, and so I say we're going to attempt to do pattern matching for this final part of the third winter update. Only an attempt, though, because actually this is a very, very unusual pattern. So what we've got is northern blocking, big time. We've got this big area of above average heights around Greenland. We have a corresponding area of below average heights underneath it. We have a trough underneath just there. So that's all okay. That's kind of standard, kind of classic. But then we also have this ridge across southern and eastern and central parts of Europe connecting up to the northern blocking, which is quite unusual. Normally when you have northern blocking in the summer, when you have high pressure up here, you'll have the corresponding trough around there. That's kind of like a standard classic type northern blocking pattern in the summer. So what's happened with the pattern in this summer is quite unusual, and it's the reason that despite northern blocking in the summer, which is normally quite a cold, wet signal, because of this ridge just here and then the low pressure just there, also turns out to be a very warm summer, bringing the wind up from a southerly direction. Anyway, that's how the pattern looks for summer 2019. These are the years I've found that possibly look similar. So you're never going to get a like-for-like match with pattern matching. You're looking for the summers that possibly have similar trends. So we've got the summer of 2015 just here. Northern blocking with above average heights, high pressure to the south, to the southeast, a trough of low pressure in the Atlantic. The trough is bigger, it's closer to us, it's a more unsettled summer compared to the summer of compared to summer of 2019, but I think there is a relatively sort of similarity there. Then we've also got summer 2010. By the way, in the comments, please let me know which years you think are the closest match to 2019. Go through these with me. Let me know in the comments which years you think are the closest match to the summer pattern that we've had during 2019. This is summer of 2012. Again, northern blocking. High pressure up there. Low pressure is underneath it, but it's a bigger area of low pressure. It's a more unsettled summer. The ridge is more to the south and southeast, so not as keen on that one. 2009, again, we've got the blocking signal up here during the summer of 2009. Low pressure is out to the west of us, a ridge kind of to our south and southeast. What do we think? I think there could be a similarity there between 2019 and the summer of 2009. A long gap to 1954. Again, this one with high pressure up to the north and to some degree to our east as well, although less so than this year. Low pressure just to our west-southwest. I think that's possibly the best match that we've seen so far. Summer of 1944 to the summer of 2019. 1980, not very keen on this one at all. This one, very strong with northern blocking, but look how much deeper the low pressure is. That's more of a classic type pattern, actually. But the only reason I included it is that it does have some above average heights down here and over there. But I think overall that one is probably one to exclude. 1911, now this is a very warm summer, interestingly, as well. So this one has high pressure up towards Greenland, so there's the northern blocking. Does have a ridge across central parts of Europe as well. It has the below average heights out to our west-southwest. Brings up wind rather like that. So it's a hot summer in 1911, but with northern blocking. I reckon that's fairly close. Again, we're only talking about similarities. It's not a perfect match by any means, but that's perhaps a slightly better one. This is 1906. Now, again, this one has northern blocking. Only reason I included this one is that the above average heights, again, extending down into Europe, but they're extending more into the west of Europe with the low pressure pushing into the middle of the Atlantic. So, again, it's a similarity, but everything is slightly different. 1888 is our next summer. Again, above average heights to the north. We've got low pressure down to our southwest. Not as much high pressure sitting to our east with that one. I'm not as keen on that particular one. And then 1887, again, we've got the above average heights up to the north, extending down into Europe, albeit again to west of Europe. Low pressure is to our southwest. Not quite as keen on that one. And then finally, and again, very, very few summers match up in any way to 1882. So really, really struggling with these pattern matches, to be honest. But the last summer is 1882. Again, the above average heights to the north and also extending into eastern parts of Europe, below average heights, more centred over top of the country. So again, that's not a particularly good match really to the summer of 2019. Please let me know in the comments which year you think are the closest matches. This is how the winters turned out following those individual summer pattern matches. So this is the winter of 1882, 1883. This one with below average heights out to the northwest, above average heights to our east. This is a mild southwesterly winter, bringing in winds from the southwest. That's a mild winter for 1882. 1883. The next winter is 1887, 1888. This one is a coldish winter. It has low pressure to our south. It has high pressure out to the northwest, and we're bringing in northeasterly winds with that winter. The next one is 1888, 1889. Again, low pressure to the south, high pressure out to the northwest. Quite a coolish winter with that one. The next one is 1906, 1907. Unsettled winter this. Not a particularly cold winter, although it does have quite a cold Christmas. Let's see where we are. So we're going through to 1911, 1912. That was one of the better matches, I think, for this summer. And it's a mild winter for 1911, 1912, bringing in westerlies. Then we're up to 1918, 1919. This is quite a coldish winter. Has high pressure up towards Greenland, low pressure underneath it. So it's got northern blocking and that's unsettled and relatively cool winter in 1918, 1919. 1944, 1945 is a relatively dry winter. Again, this is a better match for the summer of 1944 with the summer 2019, I thought. This one, high pressure out to our west in the winter, and it's quite a cool but dry winter in 1944, 1945. They have that long gap, of course, to 2009. This is how the winter of 09-10 looks. Very cold winter, low pressure to our south, strong northern blocking up to the north. The jet stream is pushed southwards as well. That's a very cold and wintry winter in 09-10. 2011-2012 looks like this. High pressure is out to west, but cold air is across the east of Europe. With that particular winter, we're relatively dry and reasonably mild. 2012-2013 looks like this. So again, it has high pressure out to west and also to the north. Low pressure is to the east, to the south. Overall, it's a winter that gets colder and colder as we go along, culminating, of course, in that bitterly cold March 2013. And then finally, we've got winter of 2015-2016, which is a mild Atlantic-driven winter, low pressure to the north, and we bring in those very mild west or southwesterly winds. Putting all of that together, this is how, if we put all of that together, finally, so let's get rid of that. This is how all Decembers combined are looking. So we find that we have low pressure as a trough centred over the top of the country, above average heights to the north, so a little bit of blocking up to the north. However, generally these Decembers look like they will be relatively mild and wet following most summer pattern matches. But look what happens for January. Northern blocking big time. That's a much colder signal for those Januaries, favouring strong blocking to the north and low pressure to the south and to the southeast, favouring bringing those easy winds. So those summer pattern matches do favour a cold and wintry January and a cold February. That's how February looks, again with low pressure to our south and southeast, high pressure blocking up to the northwest, again bringing those east or northeasterly winds. So cold wintry February. That's March, also favouring being a colder than average month following most summer pattern matches, blocking around Iceland and Greenland, low pressure underneath it, so you'd expect a cold, a wintry end to winter and early spring. And then putting all of those summer pattern matches together, this is how the winters themselves are looking following these summer 2019 pattern matches. All winters combined, favouring low pressure to be to the south, high pressure up to the north, blocking around Greenland. And yeah, that's a very cold and wintry looking signal for those winters, albeit December favours a milder outcome, but cold and wintry signal there with those summer 2019 pattern matches. Finally, just say that if you've been enjoying the winter updates recently, can you please consider becoming a patron for GWV? You can become a patron by coming to GWV's Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account and giving an ongoing monthly donation to GWV. It could be anything from $1 a month upwards. Alternatively, you can become a PayPal donor and give a donation through PayPal. Whether you do it through Patreon or PayPal, you will get a mention in the videos. Give you a shout out and say thank you so much for doing that. We have 62 patrons so far, so hello. And a big thank you to our 62 patrons. And that is it for the third winter 2019-2020 update. I was hoping to bring it in under an hour. We've ran for 1 hour, 6 minutes. Been an incredibly long video. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it interesting and informative. I'm just about done for, I have to say. I'm going to have to go down. I'm going to have to go and have a lay down in a darker room. But I hope you found the video interesting and informative. Just to say that next week we will follow on from those summer pattern matches and we will have a look at more definitive summer data, looking at things like the summer CET and also precipitation for this summer and comparing to past winters. So we will pick up with the fourth winter update exactly where the third update has just left off. Right, this video will be placed on the winter updates and forecast page with written summary going over everything that we discussed in the video. I'll be back at 5 o'clock, and I'll get that up for you around 7, 8 o'clock tonight. I'll be back at 5 o'clock on the YouTube channel, and we're going to have a chat about this update. I'll answer as many questions as I can that you might have about this winter update. So I'll see you at 5. Otherwise, come back later on when this video is placed on winter updates and forecast page at 1 hour. 8 minutes, the longest winter update we've ever done, I believe. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.